1 Pe 2. 22 Jesus represented things as they really were. Besides being full of truth, Jesus was himself the truth, and truth came through him. He declared, I am the way and the truth and the life. Job 14. 6. And the Apostle John wrote, the law was given through Moses, the undeserved kindness and the truth came to be through Jesus Christ. Job 1. 17. John's words do not mean that the law given through Moses was erroneous. It, too, was truth, conforming to God's standard of holiness, righteousness, and goodness. PS 119. 151. Row 7. 10-12. However, the law served as a tutor leading to Christ. 3. 23-25 and had a shadow, or prophetic picture, of greater realities. Job 8. 4. A curse upon the one swearing if he fails to fulfill the oath. This is the word used for the oath, or sworn statement, to Abraham by Jehovah, who never fails to fulfill his word and upon whom no curse can come. GE 26. 3. The other Hebrew word used is a middle dotla, meaning oath, cursing. GE 24. 41, FT, and it may also be translated oath of obligation. GE 26. 28. A Hebrew and Aramaic lexicon by Cooler and Baumgartner p. 49 defines the term as a curse, threat of calamity in case of misdeed, laid on a person by himself or by others. In ancient Hebrew times it was considered the gravest matter to make an oath. An oath was to be kept, even to the oath-taker's hurt. PS 15. 4. Mount 5. 33. A person was held guilty before Jehovah if he spoke thoughtlessly in a sworn statement. The 5. 4. Violation of an oath would bring the most severe consequences of punishment from God. Among the earliest nations, and particularly among the Hebrews, an oath was in a sense a religious act, involving God. The use of the term a middle dotla by the Hebrews by implication made God a party to the oath and professed a readiness to incur any judgment he might be pleased to inflict in event of the oath-maker's infidelity. This term is never used by God with reference to his own oaths. The corresponding Greek terms are horkos oath and o middle dot neo swear, which both occur in James 5. 12. The verb or middle dot kaizo means put under oath or solemnly charge. Mr. 5. 7. Act 19. 13. Other terms related to horkos mean sworn oath. Heb 7. 20. Put under solemn obligation or oath. 1th 5. 27. False swearer or oath breaker. 1t1. 10. And swear without performing or make an oath falsely. Mount 5. 33. The Greek word a middle dot na middle dot them a middle dot iso is rendered bind with a curse in Acts 23. 12, 14, and 21. Expressions used in making oaths. O textoi acute miritra longo. Oath 517. Pagans made a similar appeals to their false gods. Jezebel the Baal worshipper appealed, not to Jehovah, but to God's lo middle dot him, with a plural verb, as did Ben-Hadad II, king of Syria. 1 Kai 19. 2. 20. 10. In fact, because such expressions were universally prevalent, idolatry came to be represented in the Bible as a swearing by some false god, or by what was no god. Job 23. 7. J 5. 7. 12. 16. And 8. 14. In a few very serious cases, or when strong emotional feeling attended the solemn declaration, the curses or punishments. 9, 16, 17. 2. 4, 10-13, 19, 20. 3. 9-13. 4. 10. With the exception of the genealogical listing Ru 4. 18-22. The events related in the Book of Ruth cover a period of about 11 years in the time of the judges, though it is not stated exactly when it was during this period that they occurred. Ru 1. 1, 4, 22. 2. 23. 4. 13. Jewish tradition credits Samuel with the writership of the book, and it would not disagree with internal evidence. The fact that the account concludes with David's genealogy suggests that the writer knew about God's purpose respecting David. This would fit Samuel, for he was the one who anointed David to be king. Therefore, it would also have been appropriate for Samuel to make a record of David's ancestral background. 1 Samuel 16. 1:13. Authenticity and value. That the book of Ruth is historical is confirmed by Matthew's genealogy of Jesus Christ, which lists Boaz, Ruth, and Obed in the line of descent. Mount 1. 5. Compare U 4. 18-22. 1 Ch 2. 5, 9-15. Moreover, it is inconceivable that a Hebrew writer would have deliberately invented a foreign maternal ancestry for David, the first king in the royal line of Judah. The historical record provides background material that illustrates and illuminates other parts of the Bible. The application of the laws involving gleaning Law 19. 9, 10. De 24. 19-22. Ru 2. 1, 3, 7, 15-17, 23 and brother-in-law marriage to 25. 5-10. Ru 3. 7-13. 4. 1-13 are vividly portrayed. There is evidence of Jehovah's guidance in the preservation of the line of descent leading to the Messiah and also in the choice of individuals for that line. Israelite women who were married to a man of the tribe of Judah had the possible prospect of contributing to Messiah's earthly line of descent. G 49. 10. The fact that Ruth, a Moabitess, was so favored illustrates the principle stated by the Apostle Paul. It depends, not upon the one wishing, nor upon the one running, but upon God, who has mercy. Row 9. 16. Ruth had chosen Jehovah as her God and Israel as her people, and in his great mercy, Jehovah granted to her a perfect wage in permitting her to become a link in the most important line of descent. Ru 2. 12. 4. 13-17. Sabbath day. A day set apart by God for rest. In his letter to the congregation at Corinth, Paul wrote, "Who is it that ever serves as a soldier at his own expense?" 1 Cor 9. 7. Although Paul had not accepted material help from the Corinthians, he here argued that, as a soldier in the service of his master Christ, he certainly had authority to do so. Paul also considered as soldiers of Christ those who worked in cooperation with him in the preaching of the good news, calling them fellow soldiers. PHP 2. 25. PHM 2. To Timothy, who was charged with a heavy responsibility by Paul, the apostle wrote, "As a fine soldier of Christ Jesus, take your part in suffering evil." No man serving as a soldier involves himself in the commercial businesses of life, in order that he may gain the approval of the one who enrolled him as a soldier. 2T2. 3. For a good soldier expects hardships, and he knows the need to be ready to serve at all times and to endure under the most trying conditions. As long as he is in a war, he does not look for comfort in that which pleases him. His time and energy are at the command of his superior. Moreover, a soldier gives up business, farm, trade, or vocation in order to serve. He does not get involved in other things that would take his mind and energy away from the important fight in which he is engaged. Otherwise, it would likely cost him his life, or it would cost the lives of those depending on him. According to historians, Roman soldiers were not allowed to engage in any trade and were forbidden to act as tutors or as curators to an estate so that they would not be diverted from their purpose as soldiers. Even under the Mosaic law, the newly married man, or the man with a house he had not dedicated or a vineyard from which he had not received fruit, textoi acute miritra longo, Solomon 987 than the prophet, and called his name Jedidiah, for the sake of Jehovah. 2 Samuel 12. 24, 25. Solomon later had 3 full brothers, sons of David and Bathsheba: Shemiah, Shobab, and Nathan. 1 Ch 3. 5. Jehovah's promise to David. Jehovah had declared to David, before Solomon's birth, that a son would be born to him and that his name would be Solomon, and that this one would build a house to his name. The name Jedidiah, meaning beloved of Jah, seems to have been given as an indication to David that Jehovah had now blessed his marriage to Bathsheba and that the fruitage thereby produced was approved by him. But it was not the name by which the child was commonly known. Undoubtedly the name Solomon from a root meaning peace applied in connection with the covenant that Jehovah made with David, in which he said that David, being a man who had shed much blood in warfare, would not build the house for Jehovah, as David had it in his heart to do. 1 Ch 22. 6-10 Not that David's warfare was wrong, but Jehovah's typical kingdom was essentially of a peaceful nature and objective. Its wars were to clean out wickedness and those opposing Jehovah's sovereignty, to extend Israel's dominion to the boundaries that God had outlined, and to establish righteousness and land from the other tribes. New 18. 21-24 Levites had to give to the priesthood a tithe made up of the very best of what they received. New 18. 25-29 Offering of sacrifices. Heb 8. 3-5. 10. 5-10 Various offerings outlined in the law. Regular burnt offerings. Le chap 1. New chap 28. Communion offerings. Le chap 3. 19. 5. Sin offerings. Le chap 4. New 15. 22-29 Guilt offerings. Le 5. 1. 6. 7. Grain offerings. Le chap 2. Drink offerings. New 15. 5. 10. Wave offerings. Le 23. 10. 11. 15-17 Practices of false religion. Forbidden idolatry. X 20. 4-6. De 5. 8-10 Making cuts in one's flesh for the dead or tattooing one's body. Le 19. 28 Planting a tree as a sacred pole. Le 16. 21 Bringing things detestable, devoted to destruction, into one's house. Le 7. 26 Speaking of revolt against Jehovah. Le 13. 5 Advocating false worship. Le 13. 6-10. 17. 2-7 Going over to false worship. Le 13. 12-16 Devoting offspring to false gods. Le 18. 21, 29 Spiritism, sorcery. X 22. 18. Le 20. 27. Le 18. 9-14 Duties of priesthood. In fulfilling their duties, the priests were assisted by the Levites. New 3. 5-10 Teach the law of God. Le 33. 8, 10. Mao 2. 7 Serve as judges, applying divine law. To 17. 8, 9. 19. 16, 17 Offer sacrifices on behalf of the people. Le chaps 1-7 Use Urim and Thummim to inquire of God. X 28. 30. New 27. 18-21 Membership in the Congregation of Israel. Membership in Congregation of Israel not limited to those born into the nation. Persons of other nations could become circumcised. Worship as such alien residents were bound to keep all the terms of the law covenant. Le 24. 22 Restrictions limiting membership in Congregation of Israel. No man castrated by crushing testicles or having male member cut off. Le 23. 1 No illegitimate son or his descendants to 10th generation. Le 23. 2 No Ammonite or Moabite, evidently males to time indefinite, because they would not extend hospitality but oppose Israel at the time of the exodus from Egypt. Le 23. 3-6 Sons born to Egyptians as the third generation could be admitted. Le 23. 7, 8 Judicial system. Laws governing legal cases highlighted Jehovah's justice and mercy. Judges, but were also to contact people at their homes. Jesus instructed them, wherever you enter into a house, say first, may this house have peace. Luke 10. 1-7. In the days following Pentecost 33 CE, Jesus' disciples continued bringing the good news right to the homes. O textoi acute miritra longo, prefect 674. Thus, from the start of his missionary service in Asia, Paul searched from house to house for spiritually inclined persons. Finding such ones, he doubtless returned to their homes to teach them further and, as these became believers, to strengthen them in the faith. Dr. A.T. Robertson, in his book Word Pictures in the New Testament, comments as follows on Acts 20. 20. By according to houses. It is worth noting that this greatest of all preachers preached from house to house and did not make his visits mere social calls. 1930, Volume 3, pages 349, 350. Preaching within the congregation. Most preaching activity recorded in the Christian Greek scriptures relates to the proclamation done outside the congregation. However, Paul's exhortation to Timothy to preach the word, be it urgently in favorable season, in troublesome season, includes preaching within the congregation, as done by general overseer. 2t4. 2. Paul's letter to Timothy is a pastoral letter, that is, it was directed to one who was doing pastoral work among the Christians and provides counsel on such superintending ministry. Previous to this exhortation to preach the word, Paul warned Timothy of the apostasy beginning to manifest itself, which was to develop to serious proportions. 2t2. 16-19. 3. 1-7. Following up his exhortation to Timothy to hold to and not be sidetracked from the word in his preaching, Paul shows the need for the urgency, saying, "For there will be a period of time when they will not put up with the healthful teaching but, rather, will seek teachers who teach according to their own desires and so will turn their ears away from the truth," hence describing, not outsiders, but those within the congregation. 2t4. 3. 4. Timothy, therefore, was not to lose his spiritual balance, but was to be constant in boldly declaring God's word, not human philosophies or useless speculations to the brothers, even though this might bring him trouble and suffering from those wrongly inclined within the congregations. Compare 1t6. 3-5, 20, 21. 2t1. 6-8, 13. 2. 1-3, 14, 15, 23-26. 3. 14-17. 4. 5. By so doing, he would act as a deterrent to the apostasy and be free of responsibility for blood guilt, even as Paul had been. Act 20. 25-32. 10. Uziah's middle. Zia, my strength is Jehovah. 1. A Kohathite Levite, son of Uriel. 1ch6. 22-24. 2. One whose son Jonathan was an official of King David. 1ch27. 25. 3. King of Judah, also called Azariah, the son of Amaziah by his wife Jecholiah. Uzziah is credited with a reign of 52 years 829-778 BCE. During this period Jeroboam II, Zechariah, Shallum, Menahem, Pekahiah, and Pekah ruled in succession over the northern kingdom. 2 Kai 15. 1, 2, 8, 10, 13, 14, 17, 23, 25, 27. 2 Ch 26. 3 The prophets Isaiah 1. 1. 6. 1 Hosea 1. 1 Amos 1. 1 and perhaps Joel were contemporaries of Uzziah. This king's reign witnessed an unusually great earthquake. Zech 14. 5. After the death of his father, 16-year-old Uzziah was made king by the people of Judah. 2 Kai 14. 21. 2 Ch 26. 1 According to 2 Kings 15. 1, however, Uzziah became king in the 27th year of Israelite King Jeroboam II. As this would place the beginning of Uzziah's rule approximately 12 years after the death of his father, this must refer to his becoming king in a special sense. It may be that in the 27th year of King Jeroboam, the two-tribe Judean kingdom was freed from subjection to the northern kingdom, a subjection that perhaps began when Israelite King Jehoshaphat defeated Uzziah's father Amaziah. 2 Ch 25. 22-24 So it may be that Uzziah became king a second time in the sense of being free from the domination of Israelite King Jeroboam II. Uzziah did what was upright in Jehovah's eyes. This was largely because he heeded the good instruction of a certain Zechariah, not the prophet by that name, who lived in a later period. But his subjects continued improper sacrificing at high places. 2 Kai 15. 3, 4. 2 Ch 26. 4, 5. Uzziah became famous for his military successes, attained with Jehovah's help. He restored Elath to the kingdom of Judah and rebuilt that city located at the head of the Gulf of the Kaaba. He warred successfully against the Philistines, breaking through the walls of Gath, Jabneh, and Ashdod, after which he built cities in the territory of Ashdod. Uzziah gained victories over the Arabians and Munim, and he made the Ammonites tributaries to Judah. His powerful, well-equipped fighting force came to consist of 307,553 CE1 Galilee Capernaum Cana Sea of Galilee Samaria Jerusalem Jordan Riviera DWILDONESS Salt Separia 2 Galilee Capernaum Cana Nazareth COF Galanzili Samaria Ian Sychar Jerusalem Jordan River Judea Salt Separia 3 Galilee Bethsaida Capernaum Nazareth 8 Sea of Galilee Samaria Jerusalem Jordan River Judea Salt Separia Gadara 4 Galilee Sidon Mount Hermon Tyre Caesarea Philippi Capernaum Bethsaida Magadan Sea of Galilee Samaria Jerusalem Bethany Jordan River Judea Salt Separia 5 Galilee Sea of Galilee Samaria Ephraim Jericho Jerusalem Bethany Jordan River Judea Salt Separia. The Jerusalem that exists today has changed greatly from what it was in the 1st century. Nevertheless, on the basis of archaeological research, it has been possible to reconstruct in a tentative way some of the key parts of the city. This can help students to visualize the events that took place there in connection with the ministry of Jesus and that of his apostles. When in Jerusalem at festival times, Jesus taught in the temple area where the crowds were. Joe 7. 14, 28. 18. 20 Following his death and resurrection, his disciples filled Jerusalem with their teaching. Act 5. 28 From Jerusalem, their witnessing eventually spread to the most distant part of the earth. Act 1. 8. The activity of Jesus and his disciples confronted the nation with an important issue. Would they accept the one whom Jehovah sent as Messiah? Would they recognize their need of the kingdom of God? Though some put faith in Jesus, most were unresponsive. The nation's faithless actions were climaxed by the impalement of Jesus, which took place with popular support at Jerusalem. As a result, destruction befell the city in 70 CE just as Jesus had foretold. Luke 19. 41-44. 1st century Jerusalem principal locations with related scriptures Court of the Gentiles. Joe 2. 13-17. Mount 21. 12, 13 Solomon's Colonnade Joe 10. 22-39. Act 3. 11. 4. 3. 5. 12 Serigef 2. 14. FTN Tower Fortress of Antonia Act 21. 34. 22. 29. 23. 10, 11, 16-30 Governor's Palace Joe 18. 28. 19. 16 Sanhedrin Hall Lu 22. 66-71. Act 4. 5-22. 5. 27-41. 6. 12. 7. 57. 22. 30. 23. Didn't lead to Samaria, where the men were fed and sent home to Car 13-23. During the reign of Ahab's son Jehoram, the Syrians besieged Samaria, causing such a famine that some persons ate their own children. But then, in fulfillment of Elisha's prophecy, the famine was broken in one night when Jehovah caused the Syrians to flee in panic and leave behind their foodstuffs. 2 Kai 6. 24-29. 7. 1-20. Rival of Jerusalem. From time to time the rivalry and animosity between Samaria and Jerusalem, the respective capitals of the northern and southern kingdoms, burst into open warfare. On one occasion the king of Judah, when about to attack Edom, sent 100,000 mercenaries of Israel back home on orders from Jehovah. And even though paid 100 silver talents $660,600, these Israelites were so enraged that they raided and plundered Judean towns from Samaria clear to Beth Horon. 2 Ch 25. 5-13 The king of Judah, flushed with victory over Edom, then picked a quarrel with the king of Samaria, a quarrel that was not settled until all the gold and silver from the house of Jehovah and the king's treasury in Jerusalem had been carried off to Samaria. 2 Kai 14. 8-14. 2 Ch 25. 17-24 years later, however, after a defeat of King Ahaz of Judah, in order to escape Jehovah's anger, the men of Israel returned certain captives and booty that had been taken to Samaria. 2 Ch 28. 5-15. The city of Samaria was eventually destroyed for its idolatry, moral corruption, and continued disregard for God's laws and principles. 2 Kai 17. 7-18 Repeatedly Jehovah warned her rulers and their subjects by the mouths of such prophets as Isaiah 8. 4. 9. 9, Hosea 7. 1. 8. 5, 6. 10. 5, 7. 13. 16, Amos 3. 9. 8. 14, Micah 1. 1, 5, 6, and others 1 Kai 20. 13, 28, 35-42. 22. 8 as well as Elijah and Elisha. Later on, after her destruction, other prophets referred to Samaria as a warning example to those who would reject Jehovah's instructions. 2 Kai 21. 10-13. J 23. 13. S 16. 46, 51, 53, 55. 23. 4, 33. Later history. In 700 Holy Ones of the Supreme One is taking possession of this kingdom, many commentators have endeavored to show that the Son of Man is here a corporate personality, that is, the saints of God in their corporate aspect, regarded collectively as a people, the glorified and ideal people of Israel. This reasoning, however, proves superficial in the light of the Christian Greek scriptures. It fails to consider that Christ Jesus, God's anointed king, made a covenant for a kingdom with his followers that they might share with him in his kingdom, and that, while they are to rule as kings and priests, it is under his headship and by his grant of authority. Luke 22. 28-30. Re 5. 9, 10. 20. 4-6 Thus, they receive ruling authority over the nations only because he has first received such authority from the sovereign God. Re 2. 26, 27. 3. 21. The correct understanding is made more evident by Jesus' own answer to the high priest's interrogation, saying, I am the Christ, the Son of God. And you persons will see the Son of Man sitting at the right hand of power and coming. O text to acute miritra longo. Sosthenes 1003:13 reveals that there would be a waiting period for Jesus Christ before his Father would send him forth to go subduing in the midst of his enemies. It therefore appears that the fulfillment of the prophecy of Daniel 7:13-14 comes, not at the time of Jesus' resurrection and ascension to heaven, but at the time of his being authorized by God to take action in vigorous expression of his kingly authority. The coming of the Son of Man to the Ancient of Days, then, apparently corresponds in time to the situation presented at Revelation 12. 5-10, when the symbolic man-child is brought forth and caught up to God's throne. However, at Matthew 24:30 and Luke 21:27, Jesus prophesied regarding the sign of the Son of Man immediately after mentioning celestial phenomena of the sort that the Bible associates with divine execution of judgment on wicked humans. Compare Matthew 24:29 and Luke 21:25-26 with Issa 13:9-10 and Job 2:30-31. Since all the tribes of the earth will see the Son of Man coming on the clouds of heaven with power and great glory and will beat themselves in lamentation, it is evident that this refers to a time when a supernatural display of Jesus' kingly power will strike fear into the hearts of humans who have not conformed to God's will. Further prophetic visions in Revelation 17:12-14, 19, 11-21 show the exercise of full regnal power by the Messianic King over peoples, national groups and languages. 7:14, and hence the one like a Son of Man at Revelation 14:14 undoubtedly also represents Jesus Christ, as does the one so described at Revelation 1. Leah likely was veiled, in keeping with the ancient Oriental custom of heavily veiling a prospective bride, and this doubtless contributed to the success of the ruse. Jacob had served 7 years with Rachel in mind, but for this work he received Leah. Rachel was granted to him after he celebrated a week of 7 days with Leah, but Jacob had to work 7 more years to pay for Rachel. GE 29:18-28. The account tells us that Leah was hated. GE 29:31, 33. But it also recounts that, after he had finally got Rachel, Jacob expressed more love for Rachel than for Leah. GE 29. 30. Undoubtedly Jacob did not hold malicious hatred for Leah, but viewed Rachel more lovingly, as his favorite wife. He continued to care for Leah and to have relations with her. Leah's being hated, therefore, would merely mean that Jacob loved her less than Rachel. See hate. Leah became the mother of 7 of Jacob's children, his 6 sons Reuben, Simeon, Levi, Judah, Issachar, and Zebulun, and a daughter, Dinah. GE 29. 32-35. 30. 16-21. Accordingly, Leah is named a truth for 11 along with Rachel as one of those who built the house of Israel. Leah had the honor of having borne Levi, who became the founder of Israel's priestly tribe, and Judah, who became the father of the nation's royal tribe. Leah and her children accompanied Jacob when he left Paddan Aram and returned to Canaan, the land of his birth. GE 31. 11-18. Before Jacob met Esau en route, he protectively divided off the children to Leah and to Rachel and their maidservants, putting the maidservants and their children foremost, followed by Leah and her children, with Rachel and Joseph to their rear. GE 33. 1-7. Leah's children accompanied Jacob into Egypt, but the Bible account does not say that she did so. GE 46. 15. The time, place, and circumstances of her death are not furnished, but she may have died in Canaan. Whatever the case, the patriarch had her body taken to the family burial place, the cave in the field of Machpelah. O textui acute muritra longo, 11-230 may have served as one of the leavening agents for these products. Excavations in Egypt have yielded porous bread containing dead yeast cells. The Egyptians are also said to have used natron sodium carbonate in making bread. Sodium carbonate would not bring about the process of fermentation as did sadu, but it would provide gas bubbles to make the bread rise. In Egypt, as in Israel, the primary practice in bread making seems to have been to save some dough from a batch, let it ferment, and use the resulting dough to leaven a fresh batch. In God's law to Israel, no grain offering that the Israelites presented by fire to Jehovah was to be made of a leavened thing. Law 2. 11. However, locations in the Promised Land that were set aside as places of residence for the Aaronic priests and their families. Of the 48 cities given to the tribe of Levi by Israel's other tribes, 13 were assigned to the Kohathite priests of Aaron's family. Jos 21. 1-42. 1ch6. 54-81. The tribes of Judah and Simeon gave them 9 cities, and 4 were given by the tribe of Benjamin. Thus, all the cities of the sons of Aaron, the priests, were 13 cities and their pasture grounds. Jos 21. 9-19. These cities were Hebron, a city of refuge, Libnah, Yatire, Eshtemoa, Holin, apparently Hilon, Geber, Anashan, Jutah, Bethshemesh, Gibeon, Cheba, Anathoth, and Almon-Almeth, all except Jutah and Gibeon again being named at 1 Chronicles 6. 54-60. David sent word to priests in their various cities to gather together when he was about to bring the Ark of Jehovah to Jerusalem. 1ch 13. 1-5. And specific reference is made to the appointment of men to distribute contributed portions to their priestly brothers residing in priest cities during King Hezekiah's reign. 2ch 31. 11-19. Prince. See leader, noble, prince. Prisca old woman. Priscilla middle. Little old woman. The shorter form of the name is found in Paul's writings, the longer form in Luke's. Such a variation was common in Roman names. Priscilla was the wife of Aquila, with whom she is always mentioned. The two showed fine Christian works and hospitality not only to individuals, but also to the congregation by having congregation meetings in their home in both Rome and Ephesus. Because of Emperor Claudius' decree, Aquila and his wife left Rome and went to Corinth in about 50 CE. Not long after their arrival, Paul joined them in tent-making. Acts 18. 2-3. They travelled on with Paul to Ephesus, remained there for a time, and were instrumental in expounding the way of God more correctly to the eloquent Apollos. Acts 18. 19, 24-28. 1 Co 16. 19. Returning to Rome for a time. Row 16. 3-5, they later travel back to Ephesus. 2T4. 19. 1T1. 3. Their personal Otextoi Acute Muritra Longo procession 690 assigned to wait upon those who had held prominent positions before their confinement. GE 39. 21. 40. 4. Prisons date back at least to the 18th century BCE, for it was then that Joseph was wrongly confined to the jail that was connected to the house of the chief of the bodyguard. GE 39. 20. 40. 3. 40-day periods were observed with regard to marriages in Padanaram and in Philistia. GE 29. 27, 28. JG 14. 12, 17. A 7-day period was also observed at the funeral of Jacob. GE 50. 10. However, the Bible record does not show that these early 7-day periods conformed to a weekly arrangement, having a regular starting day and being followed by other comparable 7-day periods. Among some ancient peoples, the 7-day cycles were governed by the 4 phases of the moon and started again with each new moon. Since a lunar month runs either 29 or 30 days, this would not allow for completely consecutive 7-day cycles. One early reference to a 10-day period is found at Genesis 24. 55. In ancient Egypt, the time was divided into 10-day cycles, 3 such to each month, and the Israelites obviously became familiar with this during their long sojourn in Egypt. Under the law, it is first in conjunction with the instructions regarding the Passover that we find a divine ordinance requiring the observance of a specific 7-day period. This period became the annual festival of unfermented cakes that was thereafter celebrated by the Israelites after the Passover. Both the first day and the 7th, or last, day were to be days of rest. X 12. 14-20. 13. 6-10. Sabbath day instituted. However, following the inauguration of this special week, there ensued a period of about 1 month during which the Israelites were traveling on their exodus from Egypt, and in this period no mention is made of a weekly observance by them terminating with a 7th day of rest. Following the 15th day of the 2nd month of their coming out of the land of Egypt, Jehovah began to give them manna, and it was at this time that they were first instructed as to a regular Sabbath observance every 7th day. X 16. 1, 4, 5, 22-30. Such Sabbath observance necessarily resulted O textoi acute muritra longo. Weights and measures 1177 were simply designated by number, the exception being the 7th day called the Sabbath. X 20. 8. This was also true in the days of Jesus and his apostles, although the day before the Sabbath came to be called preparation. Mount 28. 1. Act 20. 7. Mr. 15. 42. Joe 19. 31. 7-day and 7-year periods. Because of the importance that the law covenant attached to the Sabbath, or the 7th day, the word Sabbath was commonly used to represent the entire week of 7 days. 23. 15, 16. It was likewise used to refer to the 7th year, which was a Sabbath year of rest for the land. And it also stood for the entire 7-year period, or week of years, ending in a Sabbath year. 25. 2-8. The Jewish mission repeatedly uses the expression week of years. A entry into that heavenly kingdom had been held out as a prospect for Jesus' faithful disciples, but on the basis of their having stuck with him in his trials, something o textoi acute muritra longo, Paradise 576 was regarded by some as on earth itself, by others as forming part of Sheol, by others still as neither on earth nor under earth, but in heaven. But there is some doubt as respects, at least, part of this. These various conceptions are found indeed in later Judaism. They appear most precisely and most in detail in the medieval Kabbalistic Judaism. But it is uncertain how far back these things can be carried. The older Jewish theology at least seems to give little or no place to the idea of an intermediate paradise. It speaks of a Gehinnom for the wicked, and a Gan Eden, or Garden of Eden, for the just. It is questionable whether it goes beyond these conceptions and affirms a paradise in Sheol. 1905, Volume 3, pages 669, 670. Even if they did teach such a thing, it would be most unreasonable to believe that Jesus would propagate such a concept, in view of his condemnation of the non-biblical religious traditions of the Jewish religious leaders. Mount 15. 3-9 Likely the paradise truly familiar to the Jewish malefactor to whom Jesus spoke was the earthly paradise described in the first book of the Hebrew Scriptures, the paradise of Eden. That being so, Jesus' promise would reasonably point to a restoration of such earthly paradisaic condition. His promise to the wrongdoer would therefore give assured hope of a resurrection of such an unrighteous one to an opportunity to life in that restored paradise. Compare Act 24. 15. Read 20. 12, 13. 21. 1-5. Mount 6. 10. A spiritual paradise. Throughout many of the prophetic books of the Bible, divine promises are found regarding the restoration of Israel from the lands of its exile to its desolated homeland. God would cause that abandoned land to be tilled and sown, to produce richly, and to abound with humankind and animalkind. The cities would be rebuilt and inhabited, and people would say, "That land yonder which was laid desolate has become like the Garden of Eden." S 36. 6-11, 29, 30, 33-35. Compare Isa 51. 3. J 31. 10-12. S 34. 25-27. However, these prophecies also show that paradise conditions related to the people themselves, who, by faithfulness to God, could now sprout and flourish as trees of righteousness, enjoying beautiful spiritual prosperity like a well-watered garden, showered by bounteous blessings from God because of having his favor. Isa 50, as is indicated by his explanations of Jewish customs and teachings, by his translations of certain expressions that would not be understood by Roman readers, and by other explanations. Both Matthew's and Mark's Gospels were intended for wide circulation, and if necessity, many copies would be made and distributed. Christian copyists were not often professional, but having respect and high regard for the value of the inspired Christian writings, they copied O texto e acute miritra longo, Scripture 879 correct. The Chester Beatty Biblical Papyri. Descriptions and texts of 12 manuscripts on papyrus of the Greek Bible, by Frederick Kenyon, London, 1933, Fasciculus I, General Introduction, p. 14. 1933, Fasciculus II, The Gospels and Acts, Text, p. 9. 1936, Fasciculus III, Revelation, Preface. More important than these characteristics, however, is their subject matter. In the main they corroborate those 4th century vellum manuscripts termed the neutrals, which are rated most highly by textual scholars Westcott and Dort. Among these are the Vatican No. 1209 and the Sinaiticus. Further, they contain none of the striking interpolations that are found in certain vellum manuscripts that have been termed, perhaps mistakenly, Western. There are extant thousands of manuscripts dating from especially the 4th century CE forward. That the copyists used extreme care is seen by scholars who have carefully studied and compared these manuscripts. Some of these scholars have made recensions or collations based on these comparisons. Such recensions form the basic texts for our modern translations. Scholars Westcott and Dort stated that the amount of what can in any sense be called substantial variation is but a small fraction of the whole residuary variation, and can hardly form more than 1,000th part of the entire text. The New Testament in the original Greek, Gratz, 1974, Volume 2, p. 2 Sir Frederick Kenyon stated concerning the Chester Beatty Papyri. The first and most important conclusion derived from the examination of them is the satisfactory one that they confirm the essential soundness of the existing texts. No striking or fundamental variation is shown either in the Old or the New Testament. There are no important omissions or additions of passages, and no variations which affect vital facts or doctrines. The variations of text affect minor matters, such as the order of words or the precise words used. Fasciculus I, General Introduction, p. 15. For several reasons, little remains of the earliest copyists' work today. Many of their copies of the Scriptures were destroyed during the time that Rome persecuted the Christians. where use took its toll. Also, the hot, humid climate in some locations caused rapid deterioration. Additionally, as the professional scribes of the 4th century CE replaced papyrus manuscripts with a stream in which his parents were represented by the sun and moon, and his 11 brothers by 11 stars. GE 37. 9, 10 Job 38. 7 parallels the morning stars that joyfully cried out at earth's founding with the angelic sons of God. The resurrected and exalted Jesus spoke of himself as the bright morning star and promised to give the morning star to his conquering followers, evidently indicating a sharing with him in his heavenly position and glory. Re 22. 16. 2. 26, 28. Compare 2t2. 12. Re 20. 6. The 7 angels of the congregations, to whom written messages are delivered, are symbolized by 7 stars in the right hand of Christ. Re 1. 16, 20. 2. 1. 3. 1. The angel of the abyss called Abaddon is also represented by a star. Re 9. 1, 11. See Abaddon. In the proverbial saying of Isaiah chapter 14, the boastful and ambitious king of Babylon, that is, the Babylonian dynasty of kings represented by Nebuchadnezzar, called the Shining One Heb. Hemiddle.l. Lucifer, KJ, is presented as seeking to lift up his throne above the stars of God. Isra 14. 4, 12, 13. See Shining One. The metaphor of a star is used in referring prophetically to the Davidic kings of Judah. New 24. 17. And Bible history shows that the Babylonian dynasty for a time did rise above these Judean kings by conquest of Jerusalem. A similar prophecy in Daniel chapter 8 describes the small horn of some future power as trampling down certain stars of the army of the heavens and moving against the prince of the army in his sanctuary. 8. 9-13. While at Daniel chapter 12, by simile, those persons having insight and bringing others to righteousness are pictured as shining like the stars in the time of the end. 12. 3, 9, 10. By contrast, immoral deviators from truth are compared to stars with no set course. Jude 13. The darkening of the stars, along with the sun and moon, is a frequent figure used in prophetic warnings of disaster brought as a result of God's judgment. Isra 13. 10. S 32. 7. Re 6. 12, 13. 8. 12. Compare Job 9. 6, 7. The dimming of such luminaries is also used in the description of the fading years of the aged person at Ecclesiastes 12. O texto e acute miritra longo, Stata 1034. Action of a miraculous nature taken on behalf of Israel's army. Stata. A silver coin with which the temple tax was paid for Jesus and his apostle Peter. Acute miritra longo. Loathsome thing. 260. Reasonably be expected to pay interest, as they would also be lending to others on interest. De 23. 20. The Hebrew scriptures censure the borrower who refuses to repay a loan. PS 37. 21. And at the same time encourage lending to those in need. De 15. 7-11. PS 37. 26. 112. 5 says Proverbs 19. 17. He that is showing favor to the lowly one is lending to Jehovah, and his treatment he will repay to him. The case of Hannah illustrates that Jehovah repays generously. After lending her only son Samuel to Jehovah for service at the sanctuary in fulfillment of her vow, Hannah was blessed, not with just another son, but with 3 sons and 2 daughters. 1 11, 20, 26-28. 2. 20, 21. While on earth Christ Jesus reflected the generous spirit of his Father Jehovah and taught others to do likewise. Amplifying the matter of making loans, Jesus said, "If you lend without interest to those from whom you hope to receive, of what credit is it to you? Even sinners lend without interest to sinners that they may get back as much. To the contrary, continue to lend without interest, not hoping for anything back. And your reward will be great, and you will be sons of the Most High, because he is kind toward the unthankful and wicked. Luke 6. 34-35. Jesus' Jewish listeners were obligated by the law to make interest-free loans to needy fellow Israelites. It was not unusual even for sinners to lend without interest to those who would be in position to make repayment. Such lending without interest might even be done with the intent of gaining some favor from the borrower in the future. On the other hand, one desiring to be an imitator of God would do more than a sinner, by lending to needy persons whose economic situation was such that they might never be able to make repayment. The application of Jesus' words is, of course, limited by circumstances. For example, the obligation to care for the needs of family members takes a prior claim. It would therefore be wrong for anyone to make a loan that would interfere with his obligation to provide life's necessities for his family. Mr. 7. 11-13. 1-5. 8. Also, the attitude and circumstances of the prospective borrower enter the picture. Is he in need because of his being irresponsible, lazy, and unwilling to accept work, although jobs he is able to perform are available? If so, the words of the Apostle Paul apply. If anyone does not want to work, neither let him eat. 2th 10. See debt, debtor. Interest. Loathsome thing. See disgusting thing, loathsome thing. 9 early purses were made of leather, of woven rushes, or of cotton. Since they were in the form of bags, they were drawn together and secured at the neck by means of leather straps or other cords. See bag. Also in use was the girdle purse, literally, girdle. Gr. Zoini. Mount 10. 9. Mr. 6. 8. Perhaps a type of money belt. Either the girdle had a hollow space in which money could be carried, or if the girdle was made of cloth and worn in folds, the money was kept in its folds. Jesus, when sending out his 70 disciples in preaching work, evidently in Judea, told them not to provide themselves with purses, indicating that Jehovah God would provide for them through fellow Israelites, among whom hospitality was a custom. Luke 10. 1-4-7. Shortly before his death, however, Jesus advised the apostles to carry purses, for he knew that his disciples would soon be scattered and persecuted. Because of official opposition, even persons favoring their message might be afraid to assist them. Also, they would soon be carrying the kingdom message to Gentile lands. All of this would require that Jesus' followers be prepared to care for themselves materially. Luke 22. 35-36. Highlighting the excelling value of spiritual things, Jesus urged his followers to make lasting purses for themselves, acquiring heavenly treasure. Luke 12. 33. Put. A son of Ham. Ge 10. 6. 1ch1. 8. Although Put is mentioned elsewhere in the Bible, none of his individual offspring are named. Often his descendants lent military support to Egypt. Ge 46. 9. Es 30. 4-6. Na 3. 9. They served as mercenaries in the armies of Tyre and contributed to that city's greatness. Es 27. 3-10. It was also foretold that Put would be among the forces of Gog of Magog. Es 38. 5. Available evidence points to a connection between Put and the Libyans of Africa. In 3 of its occurrences, Put is rendered Libyans by the Greek Septuagint and the Latin Vulgate. Ge 46. 9. Es 27. 10. 38. 5. The Hebrew Put also corresponds closely to the Put usually considered to be Livia of Old Persian inscriptions. However, Nasham 3. 9 seems to indicate that Put and the Luvim Libyans are separate peoples. But this in itself would not rule out identifying Put with the Libyans. The term Libyans was perhaps more comprehensive than the Hebrew designation Luvim, as may be deduced from the reference made by Herodotus 2:32 to Libyans, many tribes of them. The identification of Put with the Punt of Egyptian inscriptions is not generally accepted today for 6. The voice of the resurrected Jesus Christ. After Christ's resurrection and ascension, he appeared to Saul of Tarsus, later the Apostle Paul, speaking to him in a voice that Saul understood, but that the men accompanying him did not understand. Act 9. 1-9. 22. 6-11. 26. 12-18 at Acts 9. 7. The account states that the men with Saul heard a voice sound, da, ro, ftns. Here the Greek word phomidal.nes, the genitive case of phomidal.ne, is used, with the sense of hearing of the voice. This allows for the meaning that the men heard only the sound of the voice, but did not understand. When Paul later related the experience, he said that the men did not hear the voice of the one speaking. Act 22. 9. In this account the accusative objective case phomidal.ne is used. This can give the sense that, although the sound registered on their ears, they did not hear the voice as being distinct words that they understood as did Saul, to whom Christ was speaking. The Apostle Paul said, when writing to the Thessalonian congregation about the gathering of God's anointed holy ones, the Lord Jesus Christ himself will descend from heaven with a commanding call, with an archangel's voice and with God's trumpet. 1th 4. 16. The term archangel means chief angel or principal angel. Paul's expression archangel's voice evidently focuses attention on the authoritativeness of Jesus' voice of command. Jesus, when on earth, revealed the authority that God invested in him, when he said, "For just as the Father has life in himself, so he has granted also to the Son to have life in himself. And he has given him authority to do judging, because Son of Man he is." The hour is coming in which all those in the memorial tombs will hear his voice and come out. Job 5. 26-29. Use of human voice. Voice, along with language, is a gift of God. Therefore, the voice should be lifted in praise to God. This can be done by speaking the magnificent things of God, upbuilding others with o textoi acute miritra longo. Vashi 1162 figurative use. The anguish of Jerusalem's inhabitants in the face of a Babylonian attack is compared with the distressed voice of a sick woman, the voice of the daughter of Zion being likened to that of a woman giving birth to her first child. J 4. 31. The enemy would reduce Jerusalem to such a low state that any utterances made with her voice would come up from her position of debasement as in the dust and would be like the low voice of a spirit medium. Isra 29. 4. Through the prophet Jeremiah, God also prophesied that Egypt would be vanquished by the Babylonians, who would come in force as woodcutters, to chop her down. She would lie on the ground, deeply humbled. 36. 32. 1-4. 35. 20-24. The tabernacle and its equipment saw much work by artisans skilled in woodworking and working with precious metals and gems as well as weaving and embroidery. X 35. 25-35. The later temple by Solomon was even more gloriously adorned. Its cedar wood panels, as well as its doors of oil tree and juniper wood, were carved with such figures as gourd-shaped ornaments, garlands of blossoms, cherubs, and palm tree figures and were overlaid with gold. While the two copper pillars in front of the structure had network, chainwork, pomegranates, and lily work adorning their capitals. 1 Kai 6. 18, 29, 35. 7. 15-22. Solomon showed great appreciation for artistic beauty, and his great ivory throne overlaid with gold, with lion figures alongside each arm and 12 more on the 6 steps before it, was unique in the ancient world. 1 Kai 10. 16-21. The Bible lays greater emphasis, however, on spiritual beauty. Parental discipline is a wreath of attractiveness to one's head and a fine necklace for the throat. Wisdom is a crown of beauty. Lips of knowledge are precious vessels superior to any gold vases of an artisan. As apples of gold in silver carvings is a word spoken at the right time for it, and an earring of gold, and an ornament of special gold, is a wise reprover upon the hearing ear. PR 1. 9. 4. 9. 20. 15. 25. 11. 12. A pretty woman lacking sensibleness is likened to a gold nose ring in the snout of a pig. PR 11. 22. Moderation is encouraged, particularly in the Christian Greek scriptures. Women were to adorn themselves in well-arranged dress, with modesty and soundness of mind, not with styles of hair braiding and gold or pearls or very expensive gub, but in the way that befits women professing to reverence God, namely, through good works. 1t2. 9. 10 Peter could call upon examples of pre-Christian times in urging that women seek the beauty of the secret person of the heart in the incorruptible apparel of the quiet and mild spirit, which is of great value in the eyes of God.